Is this medical malpractice or was it just a bad outcome? This is a common question that the people who reach out to us believing that they may have a case ask us. It's a good question. It's an important question. It's the right question for you to ask at the beginning. And it's a question that we at Lupetin Unatin intend to answer for you. So here's the honest truth. Medicine is hard. It's not perfect. It can be quite messy at times. The human body is complicated, and doctors and nurses are people. And in our experience, doctors and nurses in hospitals generally are trying to help the patients. They are not trying to hurt anybody, but human beings make mistakes sometimes. And so the reality is that sometimes the patient, you or your loved one, does everything right. And the doctor or the nurse does everything right. And the result is still terrible. It's still a tragedy. And that can happen. Every surgery has risks. Every medication has side effects. Some diseases hide. Some patients get worse no matter what anybody does or could have done. When that happens, when that's how it goes, then that's a bad outcome. It's not medical malpractice. There's no one to blame in those situations. So let me say it plainly. A bad result all by itself does not mean anybody did anything wrong. But that's also not the whole story. Other times, the bad result happens because somebody made a mistake. Somebody didn't do something they were supposed to, or somebody did something that they shouldn't have done. Real mistakes are when it becomes medical negligence. Mistakes, errors, decisions, failures that should not have happened. That is medical malpractice. Maybe a test result came back and nobody told the patient. Maybe a doctor missed something obvious on a scan or a test result. Maybe a nurse did not tell the doctor about how the patient's test results were or how the patient was doing, that they were getting worse. And maybe a surgeon cut the wrong body part, did the wrong procedure, didn't fully inform the patient, or operated on the wrong body part. Those are different. That is not just a bad outcome. Those are examples of medical negligence. So what does medical negligence actually mean? The law does not expect doctors and nurses to be perfect. And it does not require that the treatment and the care result in a perfect outcome every time. That is not the standard for medical malpractice in Pennsylvania, or anywhere for that matter. The law requires and expects healthcare providers to be reasonably careful in the medical care that they provide patients. And so here's the test. What would a reasonably careful doctor or nurse in the same field have done in that same situation with that patient? In the law, that is what is called the medical standard of care. Think of it as the accepted way to handle the medical problem that a physician or nurse is faced with. Negligence is when the provider falls below that line. They did something a careful doctor would not have done, or they failed to do something a careful doctor would have done. And there's a second part that matters just as much. The mistake, the error, the medical negligence has to have caused harm. And so a way to think about this is asking, if the mistake, the error, had never happened, would the outcome have been different? If the answer is no, if things would have ended the same way, then there's no case, even if there was a mistake. That is not actionable medical negligence. So you need both. You need the mistake, the negligent act or failure to act, and you need real harm that was caused by it. So how do we or you tell the difference? And this is the hard part. You usually cannot tell from the outside. We, the lawyers that do this all the time, often cannot tell from the outside. Sometimes we hear certain facts and we can be pretty confident that it was medical negligence, but usually you have to get those medical records. And that can be frustrating because, your family knows that something terrible happened. It had to have been a mistake. This couldn't just have happened naturally, right? But the reality is that you don't necessarily know what was happening behind the scenes. You don't know what's in those medical records. You don't know what the doctor was told by who or when they were told it. and you don't know what was ordered or not ordered. And so there can be a lot of things that you just couldn't possibly know until you get those medical records. So we find out, and we do that with 3 basic steps. First, we get the medical records, all of them. Hospital charts, office notes, lab results, radiology imaging, nursing notes. Sometimes it's thousands of pages. We read them and we build a timeline. Who knew what and when did they know it and what did they do? Second, we research the medicine. We read the medical literature. We look at the published guidelines. We learn what should have happened for this condition, for this patient at that moment. Third, and this is a critical step that decides it and is required, we send the case, the medical records, our timeline, our reasoning to a medical expert. And this step is not optional. In the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we are not allowed to file a medical malpractice case unless a qualified medical professional reviews it and supports the case. So we hire expert doctors or nurses, and they have to be in the same medical specialty as the potential defendant. And those experts that we hire and we pay and consult with read the medical records. They read the research that we provide them. They do their own independent research. And then they answer 2 questions. Was this care acceptable? Was it reasonably careful? And if it was not, did it cause harm? Did it cause the death? If the expert tells us that the care was reasonable, we tell you. We tell you honestly and directly, even when it's not what you were hoping to hear. And that means that there was a bad outcome and there's no case to bring. And while that can be a letdown, hopefully it provides you peace of mind. And the reality is that most of the people that come to us, we ultimately have to tell them for one reason or another that it was a bad outcome and it wasn't medical negligence. But if you have questions, we will answer them and we will explain to you why it was a bad outcome and why it is not medical negligence. On the other hand, if our expert tells us that the care fell below the medical standard, that the doctor or the nurse or the hospital was negligent and it caused real harm, then you have a case. It was malpractice. And that's when we get to work. So here's the short answer. A bad outcome and malpractice can look exactly the same from the outside when you're the one who experienced it and lived it. But the only way to know which one you're dealing with is to get the records, contact medical malpractice lawyers who know what they're doing, who are going to do the research and speak with a qualified medical expert who ultimately makes that decision. That review, that investigation, to get that answer costs you nothing. We handle these cases on a contingency fee, meaning we only get paid for our time if we make a recovery for you. You do not owe us a fee. You do not have to repay any of the costs that we spend on our investigation unless we ultimately enter into a representation agreement and make a financial recovery for you. So think of it as a risk-free investigation into what happened to answer that question. Was it a bad outcome or was it medical negligence? And if you have any further questions, you can reach out to me, Brendan Lupetin, at Lupetin Unatin.